Good morning, Mizzou fans. Gabe DeArmond here, May 9th, a Friday, PM in the AM. This time of year, the most common question I'm asked, football or basketball, doesn't matter. What's good for next year? What's a good season? It's basically what we're going to talk about probably for the next 3 months for football and the next 5, 6 months for basketball. What's the bar for success? And so I want to extrapolate this a little bit further, not just specifically to this season. We'll have all kinds of time to talk about this upcoming season and break that question down. But what should the program's bar for success be? Like you get to the end of the year and say, yeah, that was a good year. Let's start with football because that's the earlier one. I've always said, I think for Mizzou, and I think Gary Pinkel got it to this point, you should, if you can start the year thinking 8-4 is like less than 8-4 would be a surprise or a disappointment. That's kind of the bar, right? 8-4 is your kind of normal, regular baseline year. And then, hey, a step back. Maybe you're going to go 7-5, 6-6, maybe even every great while 5-7. But the step back is 7-5 or 6-6. And then if 8-4 is the baseline expectation when you have a generational quarterback or when you get a good schedule or whatever, you're going to get up to 9, maybe 10, maybe something goes your way, and when you get to 9 or 10, maybe half that time or a third of that time, you actually get a little bit more, get one more, get to 10 or 11, which obviously would now mean a college football playoff. So that's kind of my baseline for Missouri football. 8-4, start the year, go, yeah, I think there's a pretty good shot at 8-4. That's a reasonable expectation. And I think that's certainly the case in 2025. I think Missouri's expectation going in should be 8-4. Anything less than that leaves you a little disappointed. Basketball's a little bit tougher to gauge because it's not really a specific record, right? Like 19-13 in some years is probably looks better than 23-9. Just depending on who you beat and what the rest of the country looks like. So the baseline for success for me is very simple for Missouri basketball. A good year is making the NCAA tournament, or at least a solid year. A bad year is legitimately any year you miss it. Now, obviously, there are degrees of good years, right? Being a 6 seed is better than being an 11 seed. Being a 3 seed is better than a 6 seed. Once you get there, and I've always been big on this, and I know a lot of fans disagree, I'm not going to determine the entire year on how far you go. Like, it's not fair to me to start the season saying, well, we should be a Sweet 16 team. We don't even know what the bracket looks like. We don't know who you're playing. Now, that does not mean that the NCAA tournament does not factor into your success. Like last year was up until the last 3 weeks, I think an excellent year for Missouri basketball. It turned into a good year for Missouri basketball. And then losing to Drake took it from good to decent. Not really good, but still a solid season. And I think any year in which you make the NCAA tournament is at least that. Now, there are some years, 2012, you're a 2 seed, argue that you could have been a 1 seed. That is a great year. And it was a great year with a terrible ending, but that does not erase the fact that it was a great year. Go back to 2002, Missouri preseason, I think number 4, could have been number 2. I had Kareem Rush on the show a while ago, and he thought Missouri started the season number 2. Either way, it's a top 5 team. They're the last team in the tournament. That was a bad year. I mean, the lowest acceptable good year, I guess, because they did make the tournament. But then they make a run to the Elite 8, and that takes that from a barely acceptable year to a pretty good year, right? I'm still not going to say great because that team should have been better than it was. But just baseline, what's at the end of the year going to leave me saying, yeah, that was good? It's quite simple. It's make the NCAA tournament. Unless, you're 8-24 and win the SEC tournament and get lucky, which isn't realistic and isn't going to happen. So that's kind of where I fall. 8-4 football, and I'm not going to say like, hey, you have to be in this bowl game because that's kind of beyond people's control, or you have to win a bowl game. I don't really think that impacts the year unless the bowl game is, a playoff game. Basketball, it's make the NCAA tournament. That's kind of where I set the line for, again, not great year, but at the end, you look back and say, yeah, that was good. Those are my baselines. Curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, as always, over in the thread on Power Mizzou or on X. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Expecting a quiet weekend, but when we expect a quiet weekend is when it usually isn't. So if something happens, we're certainly going to be there covering it, let you guys know, like we are every day, all year long. Thanks for hanging out. Be back Monday, unless something happens that means we ought to be back sooner. Then we'll do that. Talk to you later.